Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women of Flexo Lunch and Learn with Dawn Rochelle. Hi, I am Jenny Scott, one of the co-chairs. I'm from Berry Global, and Katie Graham is another co-chair with me as well, too. She's from BOPST, and we're glad to have you here today to listen to our Lunch and Learn. I like to start off these presentations with a quote, and I try to relate it as much as I can to the speaker and what we're going to talk about. And I thought this worked out very well. Though no one can go back and make a brand new start, anyone can start from now and make a brand new ending. So I hope you keep that in mind as you listen to Dawn talk to us today as well. For the agenda, we're going to review a little bit about what Women of Flexo is all about. Talk about the leadership team and their updates. I'll introduce Dawn as well. She'll review her presentation, and then we should have some time at the end for some Q&A as well. So about Women of Flexo, our mission and vision, we're comprised of industry members who work to support and promote women in the flexographic industry through a variety of opportunities. And you can definitely visit our womenofflexo.org to learn more about that as well. Here's an overview of what our leadership team oversees with the 4 different committees we have, and I'll review a little bit more about what they're working on here in the next few slides. Our leadership diversity team has 4 ladies that are leading this team as well, as you can see, and their goals are working towards increasing female representation on panels, speaking opportunities, and industry leadership roles. They do work very closely with the FTA to ensure that different opportunities are available for women, connecting them with industry associations, create speaking opportunities and writing opportunities as well, and again, support recruitment to different job opportunities in the flexographic industry. The next group is a recruitment group, and their goal is to create a recruiting resource for women seeking new opportunities in the flexo industry. So they work with different email databases, working with different colleges, create marketing pieces directed to schools and students, and just find different ways of getting the Women of Flexo name in front of more women. The marketing and strategy team, they basically, they're the kind of glue that holds us all together, increasing the awareness of what the Women of Flexo is all about, creating synergized messaging between all the different groups that we have, working on the website, making sure it's up to date with the most information, developing roadmaps to support the other leadership teams as well. And then the other group we have is the mentorship group, and they are very, very busy. And you'll see here on the review of what they're working on. They develop relationships between members new to the industry and those with experience, and it's a very dynamic group, getting a lot of traction as well too. This is their second year that they have been working with the mentors and the mentees, having a lot of great feedback and a lot of fun over the years as well too while they're working together. They are still looking for one technical mentor with the strong networking skills, and also they are currently taking student applications, so you can scan the QR code if you'd like to apply to be a mentor or be a mentee. Again, any questions, you can email them at the email address at the bottom of that slide. And then here's some resources to find out more about Women of Flexo. You can go to the website or follow the LinkedIn page, or as you can see, there's for the 4 different committees, you can email one of those ladies if you have any questions about what they're working on and getting more involved also. Okay. So for those of you who attended our Lunch and Learn last year when Dawn presented, you remember how dynamic she was. A quick overview of her bio. She's a graduate of 3 universities. She has worked in a litigation department, opened 2 catering companies and a restaurant, and works with local inns, farmers, and purveyors to help drive business during the off seasons in Massachusetts. After 10 years in the food service industry, she worked as a middle school teacher teaching English language learning. With her extensive background, she merges her passion in these areas to help support small businesses in central and western Massachusetts. When not working, her habits are just as exciting as her career. Thank you, Dawn, for discussing this exciting topic with us today. And now I'll turn it over to you.
So I want to start out my presentation by talking about the post-pandemic SHE session. A May 2021 analysis by the National Women's Law Center found a net job loss of 4.5 million for women since February 2020, with almost 2 million having left the workforce altogether, and with BIPOC women being the hardest hit. But in some ways, this sounds all too familiar, I think, for many of us. Yeah, women aren't doing as well in the workplace. COVID just made it a whole lot worse. Why has COVID made it worse? Number one, lack of childcare forced many working mothers to choose between their children and their careers. And to put a finer point on this, 1 out of 4 women who became unemployed during the pandemic reported that their job loss was due to lack of childcare. That is twice the rate of men surveyed. You want to add to these factors longstanding biases and challenges facing women in the workplace, and you have a recipe for further inequalities and a widening gender gap. And studies show that relatively few women who take extended time off regain the careers they once had. Traditionally, it's been very hard for women to be able to take their foot off the gas and then be able to put their foot back on, because the recruiting models and the models in the labor market didn't permit it. Number 2, the COVID recession hit sectors where women's employment was heavily concentrated. So brick and mortar retail, daycare, restaurants, manufacturing, and hospitality, to name a few. This contrasts with previous downturns in which male-dominated industries like construction and manufacturing took the biggest hit. So not surprisingly, the Census Bureau has reported that for many women, particularly mothers, their entire lifetime earnings trajectory is stunted and on a totally different path because they pulled back during all or part of the pandemic. And while the tide is slowly turning and women are beginning to regain the jobs they lost, many of their career paths have changed permanently for good. Workplace perma-change. Why is this? Well, once again, number one, the number of skills employers are looking for has risen dramatically. Harvard Business Review reports that companies are listing about 33%, get that, 33% more skills on job ads post-pandemic than they did pre-pandemic. Realistically, it's impossible for companies to reskill the capabilities of their existing workplace fast enough to meet these changing needs. And this means that most employers are either going to retain and hire only those who already possess those skills, or they're going to rely on contract hiring to rent employees for shorter periods of time to meet the skills they need when the future is this uncertain. Secondly, here we all are at an online event, and we know that hybrid work and hybrid presentations and hybrid everything is pretty much here to stay. In this new hybrid environment, research shows that men are more likely to decide to return to the workplace and women are more likely to continue to work from home. Proof of that, recent Gartner survey says that 64% of managers in 2021 are reluctant to hire women because of this trend that women tend to be less likely to return to the workplace. And they still believe that office workers are higher performers than remote workers, and therefore in turn are likely to give in-office workers a higher raise than those who work from home, despite the fact that the data shows clearly that full-time remote workers are 5 times more likely to be high performers than those who work full-time from the office. So by deductive reasoning, if men are more likely to return to work from the office and managers retain a bias toward in-office workers, you should expect to see managers over-rewarding male employees at the expense of female employees, which will worsen the gender wage gap at a time when the pandemic has already had a disproportionate impact on women. Add to that the complexity of conflict management, something we're going to talk about later in this presentation, and a hybrid workspace to the mix. And there are even more concerns when it comes to making sure that women are on track in their careers post-pandemic. And finally, the future remains uncertain. What we do know, the only thing that we do know for sure, is that the rapid adoption of new technology and evolving business models is going to continue indefinitely, and that employees at all levels will need to continuously learn new ways to deal with ongoing business disruptions, like, for example, supply chains. So in sum, the old advice that told us, hey, get an education, choose a career, work hard, be loyal, that is no longer going to lead to the security and long-term success that it once did. If you hope to survive and prosper in the 21st century as a career woman, you are going to need a significant shift in your career management strategy. And how are you going to do this? How are you going to survive and thrive in the post-pandemic workplace? Well, I'm going to tell you it's as easy as 7-6-5-4. 7. We're going to talk about 7 ways to keep growing your career post-pandemic. First of all, identify how you'd like to grow and stay focused on that goal. The first step toward professional development is figuring out what you are working toward. Everyone should be taking time to consider where she wants to go in her career. What is your next step once the economy improves? Do you want to move up within your current company? Is a role at another company a better step for you? If you are unemployed right now, what do you want your next job to be? Is there an aspect of your current or previous roles that you want to focus more prominently on? Once you've clarified your goals, my advice is to focus on skills. What skills do you need to develop or strengthen? What types of experience do you need to gain? What kind of connections will be helpful for you to cultivate, to reach that goal, to make your next move? If you are not sure where to start, check LinkedIn. What are the skills and backgrounds of people in the roles that you would like to inhabit? Use those as your starter goals. Number 2, set up a meeting with your manager to discuss your career. If you are worried your career is stalling, I would absolutely recommend you do this. Get a feel for where you're going within the company. When you schedule the meeting, you want to give your manager a heads up that you plan to discuss your career progression, so that your manager is going to have time to prep and the discussion will be more productive. You can do this during an upcoming performance review if you happen to have one, or you can just set up a separate meeting. But regardless, communicating with your manager like this is going to keep you top of mind as new opportunities arise in your company, and is also going to help keep you both on the same page about what your goals are, and give your manager a chance to provide you with feedback about what hard skills they want to see you develop or what soft skills they want to see you embody. Remember that when you come to this meeting, as in any meeting, you want to come prepared with what you want to discuss. You want to be realistic. So right now, when times are this uncertain, maybe a big raise or promotion is not within the realm of possibility, but maybe it will be later. You also want to be positive, but you want to be very clear about what it is you want. So it's nice to be grateful for what you have and express thanks for that. Do not feel guilty for looking out for yourself and saying, hey, this is good for now, but I really want more. What can we do together to get there? Volunteer for stretch assignments, number 3. If your manager or senior leadership needs help on a new project related to your career goals, you should be the first one to raise your hand. So for example, maybe your company launched a diversity and inclusion initiative in response to the BLM movement. If you are looking to grow your diversity awareness or your leadership skills, volunteer to join the team working on this. Managers, remember who wants to take on responsibility. And this is going to help you grow within your company. This will also be a chance for you to develop new skills or practice skills you learned outside of work in a professional setting, or learn about a new part of the business, all of which can make you a better applicant for a new position if you wish to move on to a different company. Number 4, get innovative and pitch new ideas. So let's say there are no stretch assignments on the horizon. You can create your own stretch assignments by thinking proactively about ways to improve your current company. So you might want to propose, say, a new program that will help fill a gap, or share your ideas for streamlining the current process. Identifying problems and proposing solutions to those problems is a leadership skill that will allow management to see you as someone ready for more responsibility when the time comes for promotion. Or you could tell this story about your achievement in your cover letter for future jobs. Remember, if you're writing those cover letters, you want to show, not tell. So you can use this as an example. And this is especially true for any kind of career with managerial components. You can also pitch new ideas that are going to help you develop those skills you need. So for example, maybe there's a new software program you want to learn more about that would make your team's project management tracking more efficient. Be the first one to offer to explore it and spearhead the change if it goes forward. In this regard, I would advise you to think big, but think small. So companies may be hesitant to say yes to really large, expensive projects just now. Number 5, grow and maintain your network within and outside your company. Having those strong connections with people you work for and with is a must for career growth. And networking with people outside your company will give you people to reach out to once you're ready to look for a new job, or spawn ideas that you want to take back to your company to raise your profile. If you cannot attend events in person, attend them virtually, even if you have Zoom fatigue. Number 6, find a mentor. Professional mentors can provide unique insight into your field and give great advice for someone who's previously been in your shoes. Maybe there's a highly experienced person in your field you admire, or someone in a professional group you're part of who always has something insightful to say, or a more experienced alum from your college with your dream job. Now is the time to try to connect. You have nothing to lose. Once you find your mentor, set up regular meetups and have them help you prepare yourself for future career growth. So, for example, ask them for feedback on projects. Ask them to help you practice video interviewing, or having a challenging conversation with your boss, or have discussions with your mentor about which skills you should build to enhance your career. So finally, 7 of 7, take control of your self-development through online and in-person classes, books, podcasts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So as I emphasized in the previous slides, it is critical post-pandemic to not become fossilized and to keep growing your skill set. Remember, 33% more skills that you need now to be a vital contributor to your company. If you are feeling too busy or overwhelmed, do it slowly. Make a commitment to say, listen to a podcast that's going to help your growth, and listen to it for 5 minutes a day. Small investments that add up big time. So we're going to talk about 6 essential skills for post-pandemic career success. Remember those that 33% more skills you need? Here are a bunch of them. Notice, by the way, that many of these skills are soft skills. So the most recent report by Deloitte Access Economics forecasts that 2/3 of all jobs by 2030 are going to be soft skill intensive. So developing those type of soft skills right now is key. Of those skills, number 1 is leadership. It is a fallacy that only managers should possess leadership skills. All employees, no matter how junior, should look to demonstrate good leadership post-pandemic. And when I say leadership, I am not talking strictly about the management and supervision of others. Leadership is about your willingness to communicate your strategy and vision while encouraging others and embracing feedback. Self-awareness and accountability, also critical qualities in any leader, particularly post-pandemic. Number 2, flexibility, adaptability. Hey, pivot is now a byword, and employers are looking to groom employees with an open mindset, as well as the ability to to work well under pressure, adapt to new and unexpected deadlines, and prioritize tasks. It is also becoming more and more important to show a readiness to take on responsibilities outside the scope of your job description if you want to rise in your company or get a high-level job at a different organization. Next, critical thinking. Data published by the Society for Human Resource Management found that 37% of employers consider critical thinking the top soft skill employees and job candidates do not have, that they lack. What do good critical thinkers do? They ask questions that can help them dig deeper, like what's happening? Why is this important? Who is being affected? Where did the information come from? How reliable is the source? Particularly important, this kind of skill, in the era of disinformation that we find ourselves now navigating. Next, tech savvy. So for someone like me, who's a quill pen girl at heart, this one's tough, but it's really important. It is unlikely you'll ever need to know every single system or every single platform that exists, but developing and demonstrating a solid working knowledge of data literacy, computer programming, big data, the cloud, AI, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and more is going to help you stand out when it comes to getting promoted or moving on. Number 6, emotional intelligence communication. Emotional intelligence communication go hand in hand. And there is still, and maybe especially, a need for genuine human connection and understanding in every job role post-pandemic. To have good emotional intelligence means that you are aware of and can demonstrate empathy for others' emotions and behavior, which is critical when people are feeling uneasy, not on top of it, unmoored, as many are now. And this is also where good communication skills are critical, because as many of us continue to work from home, that kind of clarity in email and at virtual meetings is a must to cement trust and retain productivity levels. Finally, number 6 of 6, creativity and innovation. We have seen machines and digital technologies take on roles in analytics and in business operations, but human beings are still unique in being able to think outside the box. Creativity is not only associated with typically creative professions either. It is essential across every industry and sector. In the coming years, the business landscape is going to need to evolve and adapt rapidly. And anyone looking to raise their progression, will need to be able to tap into their creative mindset in order to steer their company through the challenges and opportunities that it faces. All right, now we're getting to 5. I'm going to talk about 5 tips for getting noticed while working remotely. I'd mentioned earlier that it's a real struggle for those of us who work from home to win our managers' trust and get them to think about us and keep us top of mind when we are gunning for a promotion and those promotions exist. So how can you get yourself noticed? Number 1, find new ways to celebrate your achievements. When you're in the office, it's the easiest thing to drop by a colleague's desk or pop into your boss's office to give them an update or share a win. At home, it is a much bigger risk that you will find yourself in a silo where your work is getting done, but nobody notices what you're doing. And that's demoralizing, and that could prevent you from progressing the way you want to in your career. Given that the hybrid workplace is here to stay, however, and that many of us will continue to work from home by choice or by fiat, there are ways to make an impression from afar. The key is to develop new outlets to promote yourself without going overboard. You want to keep your manager aware of accomplishments with concise yet informative weekly recaps. You'll win brownie points this way for keeping them informed of your progress, your decisions, and your risks while you are simultaneously highlighting your successes. You want to quantify things like cost and time savings, percentage increases in revenue, and other hard metrics. And as you find new ways to share your triumphs in place of your former channels, you may want to refine and tweak them. So, for example, your weekly performance recap can end up becoming twice weekly, or the sales spreadsheet you use to keep for your own files might get tidied up into something more formal that you share in Google Docs so your boss can see your progress in real time. Regardless, these are ways you can get people to notice you and say, hey, look at everything I'm doing for you. Number 2, do not be camera shy. So right now, none of us are showing our faces on this video presentation. But if you are at a meeting, you want to keep your video on as much as possible. Showing your face is showing engagement. That old adage, out of sight, out of mind, it holds true when it comes to remote meetings. Plus, if you do not show your face, you are feeding into your manager's preconceived notion that because you're working at home, you are sitting around eating bonbons and not doing your work. So show your pearly whites, big smile into the camera. Next, raise your virtual hand to volunteer for special projects. This is a great way to show that you are performing without being super annoying and look like you're brown nosing. Many bosses are under the mistaken impression, as we keep discussing, that employees work off-site in order to avoid having to work harder. So prove the lie to that assumption. After you take on those additional responsibilities, tell your boss you'd like to schedule a brief weekly phone call to touch base on the undertaking. So that's another way of feeding into that number 1, finding ways to celebrate your achievement. You can use this time to bond with your boss as well and build a stronger relationship. Number 4, forward any glowing reviews to your supervisor. That again is a way to celebrate your achievement. Pre-COVID, whenever a positive review or praise from your colleague trickled into your inbox, you probably neglected to forward it to your boss. Right now, don't do that. It is a great reminder, that email, of what an indispensable team member you are. And this practice is going to ensure that your manager is in the loop about the great work you're doing without needing a long phone call or a long email to convey the news. By making this process as convenient as possible for your boss, you are positioning yourself smartly for that salary bump or promotion. And it can also help your case during scheduled appraisals or reviews. Finally, 5 of 5, connection. Connect with your colleagues. Even if you cannot see your colleagues in person, challenge yourself to schedule 2 or 3 virtual coffee dates a month with people from work you haven't connected with before. Do not be shy about sending blind emails to executives and peers on different teams. Might be a cold call now, but you could very well be forging a long-term strategic ally for down the line. Focus on building that relationship, on staying present, and finding ways to help so you are top of mind for recognition and promotion, and differentiate from other Zoom meetings by creating a different atmosphere. So for example, if normally you kind of have a home office and you're at your desk when you are on Zoom calls, move to another area of the home, move outside. And doing so is going to underscore that personal connection that you're hoping to foster and make the other party feel more relaxed. Connectivity is the one thing that I think everyone has missed the most during the pandemic. So if you're not able to establish that connectivity in person, do it remotely, and just make sure that you're doing it regularly. Finally, we're going to talk about 4 steps to resolving conflict with a remote colleague. I mentioned before that working remotely, conflicts tend to arise that maybe wouldn't when you are in person. Absent those nonverbal cues, it's often difficult to gauge how well your relationship is going. If something does start to derail your relationship, you don't have the benefit of those informal water cooler interactions to build rapport and reestablish trust. Small irritants that aren't addressed, that happen remotely, can really fester into long-term resentment and eventually impact your work and your progression. But there are these 4 techniques that you can use to deliver feedback that's going to get your relationship back on track. First, you're going to want to set the stage. You might have been thinking about concerns in your relationship with your coworker for a while, but suddenly springing feedback on that colleague might take your colleague off guard and put them on the defensive, which is going to erode trust rather than strengthen it. So instead, you want to give your colleague a call or send them an email to see if you can set up some time to talk about how things have been going. So if I was going to do this, I might say, for example, hey, I am finding it challenging working remotely, and I'd like to spend some time talking with you about what's working and how we could be more effective together as a team. So that would be one way to do it. Number 2, pay attention to medium. Ideally, when you have this conversation, you want to use the video. You want to use Zoom or Teams or whatever your video platform of choice is, not just audio. The reason is because with the addition of video, you're going to have those facial expressions that are going to help convey your positive intentions. If, however, you are for whatever reason relegated to the phone, you are going to need to go out of your way to convey your openness with your words and tone. Be explicit that you're interested in making the relationship work for both of you and that you're open to giving and receiving feedback. So for example, I might say, hey, colleague, thanks so much for setting up this time with me. I thought it would be valuable to give each other some feedback and talk a little bit about how we can work effectively at a distance. In addition to medium, number 3, you want to take care with your delivery. When it comes to delivering feedback remotely, you want to use the same formula you would in an in-person situation. First of all, you want to provide crisp, clear, and judgment-free observations of your colleagues' behavior. So instead of saying, you were rude to me, try, when you interrupted me as I tried to be heard over the phone, ... Second, you want to describe the impact of your colleague's behavior as your reaction or impression, not as the objective truth. So, getting back to that phone interruption, you might want to say, hey, when you talked over me when I was on the conference call, I felt like you don't respect what I have to say. And finally, you want to ask an open-ended question that engages your colleague in dialogue and helps you understand one another's perceptions. So you're giving yourself the chance to put yourself in your colleague's shoes. So you might want to say, so how did you perceive that call when you were in the meeting room? Do not stop until you and your colleague each have a clear vision for how a similar situation could play out better the next time. As you're talking, annotate your conversation with both the things you're thinking and the things you're feeling. So for example, if there's a lull in the conversation, if you're quiet for a moment, don't leave your colleague wondering, what's this person thinking? Just say, hey, can you give me a moment to think about that? If you are taken back by feedback that you received from your feedback, say, wow, that's a surprise to me. I had no idea. If you are struggling with the conversation, say, hey, this is difficult for me, but I'm really glad we're getting this stuff on the table. It's going to seem foreign at first, but over time, you're going to get used to adding this layer of information to your communication. And then last but not least, number 4 of 4, you're going to develop an action plan to ensure your commitments don't just fade away because you're not bumping into each other at the photocopier. Spend a few minutes at the end of your conversation to develop an action plan. And where possible, I would put those actions right into your calendars. If you have committed to check in weekly, send a meeting invite. If you promise to follow up within 24 hours of receiving something, make it a point and a task with a reminder in your calendar. And you can even set up a reminder monthly to check in with the person just to see how things are going and soften things up a little bit. So bear in mind with this conflict management that most of us, if not all of us, avoid or delay uncomfortable conversations, even with the people who sit right next to us. So imagine how easy it is to let concerns fester when your teammate is not in the same room or even the same building as you. Avoiding an important conversation, however, it's a really bad idea. It's a bad idea with an office mate. It is a worse idea with a virtual teammate. You want to get these issues out into the open as quickly as possible before they sour your relationship and affect your ability to get the job done. So that is your 7, 6, 5, 4. Now I'd like to take any questions from the audience. If anybody has anything they would like to ask or share, fire away.
Thank you, Dawn. Currently, we don't have any questions right now, but that was a fantastic presentation. And, a couple things I took from it as well, too. You mentioned critical thinking, and critical thinking is so important, I think, in any kind of job, just thinking ahead about how the situation might play out and how to keep it on the rails versus coming off the rails, or how to problem solve as well, too. Critical thinking is so important in every kind of job. And I totally agree with your comments there.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting to look at what colleges are now doing and the kinds of skills that they are instilling in their students. And colleges are focusing more and more and more on those critical thinking skills and less on the hard skills that they used to in the past for exactly that reason, Jenny.
Yeah, great. Anybody have any questions? Please feel free to put in the Q&A section. Or any kind of comments about the presentation as well, too. I think, it's funny how you hear the presentation, and it's things we hear different times in our life, but it's always good to hear again. It's always good to keep it in front of us and stuff as well, too. So I definitely wrote down some notes and stuff as well. So I definitely appreciate the presentation, Dawn, from you. So
I'm seeing good questions here.
Yeah. So the first question from Sarah, do you have any tips for encouraging teams to get comfortable with cameras on as a standard for meetings? It feels like a burden when I enforce cameras on sometimes. I totally agree. Any comments there's one, Dawn?
Sarah, I 100% agree with you. And by the way, I am the worst offender with this. I always want my camera off in these things. I hate how I look when I'm on video. And then I'm focusing so much on my image, I'm not listening as much to what people say, or I'm distracted or whatever. What I would do, because there are also times, by the way, where you're going to be discussing very, very sensitive topics that can be potentially upsetting to people, that it may be kinder to invite people if they don't feel good about being on camera, if they don't want to be. But I would just be honest with people. And instead of issuing a mandate, you must be on camera, or, we're going to take points off your, annual review score. I wouldn't do it so much as that, as kind of say, hey, everybody, be positive. We really want to try in as much as possible as create an open atmosphere of trust and caring and sharing. And it is so much harder when we can't see people's faces and we can't see people's expressions. So I'm going to ask you in as much as possible to please try and keep your cameras on during meetings. I would then go out of your way at every single meeting to praise the people whose cameras are on. Oh my God, Sharon, thank you so much for showing your face. Hey, everyone else, how about showing those pearly whites? Do things like that. Keep it positive and upbeat and less like this ironclad mandate, and then see what happens.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay, some more questions. What would you recommend a woman should do to re-enter the workforce after being out of it for a year or more?
So the good thing about being out of the workplace for a year or more during COVID is that employers are much more understanding of time off during COVID. It doesn't look like a big gap in your resume. So this is a positive thing. A few things that I would do is I would start with your resume, and I would look at it objectively and think about, okay, how do I think this would look to somebody standing in an employer's shoes? What do I need to build, if anything, with my skills? And I would look to see, to think about, before you're employed, how you can build those skills through volunteer work or committee work, or think about things you're already doing that might not be, a standard job, but is a volunteer activity or a passion project, and put that on your resume. I would then network, network, network. LinkedIn is becoming, for some, a necessary evil, for some people an unexpected bonus, but it is a fantastic way to put yourself out there, meet with people, and not just say, hey, I'm looking for a job. I would just say, hey, can we have an exploratory conversation? I'm kind of looking at my next steps on my career path, and what you're doing is really interesting to me, and I'd kind of like to hear your story. People are very flattered when you ask them to do that. And often in the course of that conversation, without you having to do a hard sell on yourself, they'll say, you know what, I know so-and-so is looking for someone, or hey, I think something might be coming up in our company. Would you want me to forward over your resume? So use that networking. And by the way, when you network, sometimes the people who are most helpful are not the people who you think will be the most helpful. And I'm going to give you one personal example of this. My dad, many, many years ago, was president of the Chamber of Commerce in a small town in Westchester County, New York. And at the time, we had a very large Japanese population in this town, and there was tremendous animus between the Japanese population and the non-Japanese population. The non-Japanese population accused the Japanese parents of having their kids take the SATs, and the kids would get super high scores and go back to Japan, and their kids wouldn't do as well. It was really bad stuff. And my dad had this idea about having a Japan festival where people could do intercultural learning and understanding. And he was getting nowhere with that. He kept bringing it up with people who had big titles and big names, and no one was helping him. And one day, my mom happened to offhandedly mention this idea to her hairdresser. And my dad was like, yeah, well, what is a hairdresser going to be able to do to help me with this? Well, it turned out that her father, hairdresser's father, was a bigwig in the Manhattan Japanese Chamber of Commerce. And he got together, immediately called my dad, and this became, it was one of the best things my dad ever did in his life. It really changed the tone in this small town in Westchester County and brought about real cultural understanding, and turned into an annual international festival with different countries and cultures being featured each year, long before this was, even on the table in most places. So don't assume that because someone doesn't have a big job title that they're not going to be helpful to you in your networking.
Yeah, the other thing I would add to that too, and I've offered this many times, is my friends are revamping their resume or they're wanting to apply for a job or whatever. I offer to help read it for them as well too, because obviously a lot of us do a lot of hiring as well, and just looking at it from a different standpoint is also, instead of just what they think is probably right, maybe make sure get another person's opinion about it as well too. So reaching out to your mentorship group or your networking group as well to see if anybody will help work with you on that.
Absolutely. And resumes have changed. The way you're supposed to write them now is different than it used to be. There is more emphasis, like you should put on any computer skills that if you're going to be looking for a career in which those skills might be important. I know now most people will suggest that you leave off any identifying information like your address. Things that were not the case when I wrote my first resume out of college. I would even recommend, if you can afford it, if you can find a really good resume writing service, some of those can be very helpful. And in your cover letter, by the way, I keep talking about show, don't tell, in both your resume and your cover letter. Don't just say you have skills. Give examples of things you've done that prove you have those skills.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to go back and review this PowerPoint again with some of the points you listed out. The critical thinking, that's something definitely you want to put on your resume if you're a good critical thinker as well. Any kind of problem solving or process improvements and stuff too, I think are beneficial as well too. So listing those kind of skills, I think, are very beneficial.
Absolutely. And again, I feel like I'm repeating myself till I'm blue in the face. Don't just write you have the skills. Give an example
Yeah, yeah.
of where you've used that skills. Hey, I did such and such, and it makes a big impact. And when you're interviewed, same thing. People are going to ask you, okay, so give me an example of a time when. You're going to want to have a lot of examples of times when you use specific types of skills.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, it looks like Maggie offered suggestion on how to make the video part really good. So have good lighting and soft focus are best. So appreciate that, Maggie. Thank you very much. And then Jane had a good comment for you too as well, Dawn. I'm sure you can see that in the Q&A as well.
Oh, so nice. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah. So some of the other questions, you recommended meeting with your manager to discuss career goals. What if your manager is not available, remote, or not engaging your request?
Well, if your manager is going to ignore you and not work with you, in all honesty, I would wonder if I was in the right job, and if that might be a point at which I would start considering looking elsewhere. Or if there's someone higher up from your manager's manager, who you might be able to talk to. But there is zero excuse for a manager not engaging with you, not talking with you, not in some way working with you, because that is their job, is to ensure that you are succeeding in your job.
Great, thank you, Dawn. And then another question here. I really enjoyed this presentation. Do you have any suggestions for those of us who are unsure of where we want to take our careers? I'm in a position now where I am oriented well to pursue several different career trajectories, and I'm struggling to answer the first question of what I want to do.
Oh my goodness, Erica, you are talking to the right person. If you look at my career path, it could not be more nonlinear. I mean, I got a law degree, and then I was home with my kids, and then I ran a bunch of catering companies, and then I went back and got my education degree, and then I was teaching, and it's the same thing. It's, boy, what do I really want to be when I grow up? And I would say where it needs to start is what jazzes you, what fires you up and makes you want to get up in the morning. How do you really see your identity? And I would start with that. And also recognize that if you are lucky enough to be in that position where you're well oriented to pursue several different career trajectories, you probably have a lot of tremendous skills that other people don't have, that could position you well for a leadership position where you can combine everything, which I got lucky enough to do with my current position. I finally found a position where I am able on a daily basis to use my entrepreneurial, education, and legal background to help people. So that's kind of where I would start, if that makes sense.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. If you have any questions, put the Q&A section.
One more thing to Erica. When I talked about that networking, it would apply to you to check out on LinkedIn and see if there are people there or other people in your circle who are doing anything that you think, gee, that could be interesting, and ask for an exploratory conversation so you could hear their perspective about it. And that might also help you narrow down what you want to be when you grow up, if you grow up.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it seems like the internship programs and companies are so much bigger now than they used to be. But who's to say you can't be an intern even though you're 30 or 40, right?
Absolutely. Some places, for example, Teach for America. My oldest son is a senior in college and is looking into going into education, applying for that program. They take people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s in Teach for America as well, who want to explore being a teacher. So absolutely, never too young, never too old.
All right, I don't see any more questions. Really appreciate you, Dawn, getting on the call today to give us some great tips, especially during this very dynamic time that we're all living in.
Thank you. I'm also going to take the liberty of, can people see the chat if I put my info in there, or should I put it in the Q&A?
Put in the Q&A, yeah.
I'm going to put my contact info in the Q&A, and except I somehow, for some reason, can't. It won't let me do it.
Okay.
but perhaps you can, someone can email my information. And if anyone wants to contact me outside of the presentation, I would be more than happy to talk more with you if you're just a little too shy to talk today, or if other questions occurred to you later on after the presentation.
That's great. I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely between Sharon, Laura, and I will figure out a way to get this out to everybody that's been on the call and make it available. That's great. Appreciate your time, Dawn.
My
And
pleasure.
thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. And the recording of this presentation will be on the womenatflexel.org website probably in the next few days. I know I'm going to listen to it again. It's got a lot of good information, take some more notes down as well. So I appreciate everybody's time today, and I hope we enjoy the presentation.